Welcome to Malifaux University. 960, Outcast Starter Box. If you're a player new to Malifaux, you may have received a great deal of information and advice about which faction is best for beginners, which master or keyword wins the most tournaments, and more. This information is largely opinionated and will change rapidly over time, so at Malifaux University, we still recommend you look at the basic lore of the game and factions available on the Wyrd website and follow the rule of cool. That is, whatever looks cool, feels cool, or makes you say, "Oh, cool," is the faction you should play, because you'll enjoy it the most, and that's ultimately the point of the game. Each faction has a starter box with 4 models. The soulstone cost of the individual models will vary, but the entire crew will add up to 25 soulstones, which is perfect for a small game. The starter box also contains a unique faction-themed fate deck, 10 scheme markers with the faction's logo, a measuring widget, and all the general upgrades available to your faction. Let's talk about each of these before we get to the models. This fate deck, while themed for the faction, is not the same as the regular faction fate deck you can purchase separately in the Wyrd store. This one is unique to the starter box, which is pretty cool. These are paper cards, which means they're not necessarily the most durable, and if they get wet, they will take damage. If you'd like to make them last, you can buy standard-size card sleeves from your friendly local game store in a variety of colors and styles. Just keep in mind that once you sleeve your cards, you won't shuffle them like a regular deck of cards. You'll blend the halves of the deck from the side 5 to 7 times. If you shuffle them normally, you'll put creases in the sides of the sleeves and kinda wreck them. A cardstock sheet has 10 scheme markers and the measuring widget. Punch them out carefully so you don't tear the design. These scheme markers do not need to go onto plastic bases. They're already 30 millimeters across and ready for the table. You can use these with any crew in this faction you later decide to build. If you play against someone else with a crew in the same faction, you'll need to distinguish your scheme markers from his somehow, maybe by putting a coin on top of yours. The measuring widget is a fantastic tool that can stand in place of a measuring tape in most situations. It has 1, 2, 3, and 6-inch sides. If you place the tool between 2 models, it makes it easy to tell if they're within 1 or 2 inches for engagement. If you need to measure an odd number like 5 inches, just lay down the 3-inch side of the widget, then rock it around the 2-inch corner like so. You'll also notice it has a 50 millimeter cutout. This is a surrogate blast marker. If you're unfamiliar, some game effects have this symbol, and when it appears, a model might suffer blast damage. You determine that by placing a 50 millimeter base over the area, usually in base contact with the original target model, and any models within the 50 millimeter blast area are affected. You can use this widget to measure that 50 millimeter diameter without having to place a 50 millimeter base on the table. Watch video 209 for detailed instructions on how to handle blast markers and damage. In the plastic sleeve with all the model stat cards are the general upgrades allowable by your faction. You can add these to your models before the game when you're hiring your crew with certain restrictions. Each upgrade adds abilities, actions, or both, so you might want to hold off on using them when you're first starting out. Once you get the hang of your models as they are, then switch things up with an upgrade or 2. Later, when you're building other crews led by master models, you can still use these upgrades with other models in the same faction. Check out video 406 for detailed instructions on how to use upgrades. The models in the starter box are all pre-assembled. This means they are all molded at the factory and are each a single piece, so no assembly or other tools are required. The only thing you'll need to do is glue them onto their included bases. Check the base size on the bottom of the back of each stat card to make sure you put each model on the right base. You could use regular white glue, also called PVA glue, but you'll find it doesn't hold very well for long. Most players will use plastic glue to fuse the models to the bases, but this works only if it's plastic to plastic. If you create thematic bases out of cardstock, cork, wallpaper, or anything else, you'll probably have to use superglue. Though you see them here painted and ready for the table, you'll first see that none of these models is balanced enough to stand on its own 2 feet. They're all regular human models, and their boots should be enough to hold their lightweight bodies in place. Be mindful of how far the Catalan Rifleman's rifles stick out over their bases, since you don't want them to snag, especially during transport. Also, the Catalan Brawler's right leg is bent, so only his toe makes contact. You may need to prop him up while the glue dries to keep him from tipping over too far. Once you have the models on their bases, you could put them on the table and get right to playing. When you can, though, you'll want to paint them according to your own unique style and preference. You might feel like you're not very good at painting models, but it's a skill that takes practice, and there are no better models to start on than your starter box models. There are countless YouTube channels, live streams, and other resources available to teach you how to paint, so we won't repeat that information here. Painting these models is pretty straightforward, and they look good with a simple color scheme. They're essentially railroad security guards, so utilitarian and drab colors look very lore appropriate. Here's one way you might paint your models, and here's another idea, thanks to Spilled Paint Pot. You can see more of his excellent work on Instagram and elsewhere. I'll take a brief moment now to thank all those who were patrons at the time this video was made, especially Griff, Suttergay, Tom, Alan, Jeremy, Mikolai, Oleg, and Travis, and many more at the free student tier. Your support is essential to bringing these videos to life. Now that we've explored everything else in the box, let's get to the models. While the Syndicate keyword has been part of Malifaux for some time, the Outcast Starter Box models were introduced in the Malifaux Burns rulebook, so refer to that book for the lore and stories that go along with this crew. While most Syndicate models are in the Explorers Society faction, all 4 of these Outcast models have the Syndicate keyword, so as long as range, line of sight, and other rules are satisfied, any ability or action that refers to a friendly Syndicate model can be applied to any of them, regardless of their faction. Take note that Yannic Waller's card was updated in the July 2023 errata. If your card doesn't have this date on the back, you have an outdated card. You can always get the most current cards for every model through the Malifaux Crew Builder app or from the resources page on the Wyrd website. Yannic Waller is the henchman who leads this crew. As a henchman, she is the only one of the Outcast Syndicate models eligible to use soulstones. Yannic and the rest of the models in the starter box all have the Price of Progress ability, which is common among the Explorer Society Syndicate models as well. This says that after she declares an action, she can suffer 1 damage to put any suit she wants on that action's duel. This is an easy way to guarantee a trigger, but be careful not to reduce your health so far as to jeopardize yourself, considering all 4 of these models also have Hard to Kill. Hard to Kill is a great way of keeping your model alive longer than expected. This says that if she has 2 or more health, she cannot be reduced below 1 health. Say Yannic is at 3 health when an attack does 4 damage to her. She would be reduced to 1, and then simply ignore the other 2 points of damage. Now that she's at 1 health, another attack that damages her would kill her unless she has some way of avoiding that damage, like using a soulstone. If you're down to 1 health, you cannot use the Price of Progress ability since you are not allowed to pay the cost of 1 health when it would kill your model. The first ability listed on Yannic's card, Gunfighter, says she may treat any of her projectile attack actions as having a 1-inch melee range. This also applies to any projectile attacks she may gain from an attached upgrade. In practice, this means she has a 1-inch engagement range, but may also use her projectile attacks as melee attacks if she wants to, such as when she is engaged by another model. Any game effects or penalties that affect melee attacks would then have to be considered. Ingenuity can be used only once per activation, but remember that's once per each model's activation. When a friendly model within 6 inches of Yannic would discard a card from its control hand, usually because a game effect says to discard a card, the model can remove a friendly scheme marker if there is one within 2 inches of that model. This is an aura, so it also applies to Yannic herself, since auras affect their sources. Let's take a look at this for clarity. Yannic is here, the Catalan Brawler is here, about 5 inches away from Yannic, and there is a scheme marker next to each of them. Klaus Norwood, the henchman from the Neverborn Starter Box, uses his Press for Information bonus action on the Catalan Brawler. He flips the red joker for a total of 20, while the Brawler flips an 8 for a total of 13. He cannot cheat against the red joker, and Klaus says he must discard a crow card or else suffer 3 damage. The Catalan Brawler does not want the damage, but also does not want to discard the 12 of crows he has in his hand, so he removes the Outcast scheme marker right next to him, thanks to Yannic's ingenuity ability. Klaus then uses incessant questioning on Yannic, flipping a 10 of rams against her 4, giving him a 16 to her 9. She doesn't want to lose this duel, so she discards the 4 and cheats in a 12, beating Klaus in the duel, who opts not to cheat. Yannic's ingenuity ability does not take effect now for 2 reasons. First, she already used it once during Klaus's activation, and it can be used only once per activation. Second, even if the Catalan Brawler hadn't benefited from her ingenuity, the card she discarded was from the conflict, not her control hand. Skipping down to shouting orders, this ability says that friendly models with the Syndicate keyword within 6 inches of Yannic, but including Yannic since auras affect their sources, may discard a card to treat Concentrate as a bonus action. Concentrate is a general action that all models can take, and it gives the model the focused condition, which can be used for a positive modifier in duels or to cancel out the distracted condition. Let's go back to our scenario with Yannic and Klaus Norwood. It's Yannic's activation, and she uses both her regular actions for her Solberg Inertia shotgun, turning Klaus into a puddle of purple goo. She doesn't feel like using her regular bonus action, so she can discard a card to Concentrate, giving her focused +1. But she also has the ingenuity ability, so instead of discarding a card for Concentrate, she can remove the scheme marker next to her and then Concentrate. On the back of Yannic's card, we see her Solberg Inertia shotgun has a 10-inch range. While she has no ordinary melee attack, her gunfighter ability gives her an engagement range of 1 inch. This attack does 2, 4, or 5 points of damage, and the moderate and severe tiers both have a blast effect. You'll use the cutout on the measuring tool, holding it in base contact with the model she just shot. Any models that wind up in the diameter of that cutout take damage 1 tier lower. When she was shooting Klaus, say one of his little red-cap puppets was near him. If she did moderate damage to Klaus, he would take 4 points of damage, and the red cap, which falls within the blast marker, then takes 2 points of damage, since that is the weak damage on this attack. If Yannic gets a crow in the duel from flipping, cheating, using a soulstone, or from her Price of Progress ability, she can declare the Daze trigger. This gives the target the stunned condition and pushes it up to 3 inches in any direction. Since it says up to 3 inches, you can push the targeted model less than 3 inches, or no distance since 0 is less than 3. Note this affects only the model targeted by the shotgun, not other models who may have been damaged in the blast. Yannic's first tactical action is called Democratic Elections. It has a target number of 10 and a stat 5, so she'll need a 5 or better to make it happen. She can use this only once during an activation, and even though it is a 6-inch pulse and pulses don't affect their sources, the text specifically says she is included in the action's effects. This one will take some planning, as it says you first choose any number of models within that 6 inches to heal 1. Then, the same number of models within 6 inches suffers 1 damage. Normally, you'd probably want to heal your own Syndicate models and damage the enemy models, but you can arrange that any way you want, even if it's the same models being healed and then damaged again. Also keep in mind that 0 is a number, and you could skip the healing and damage altogether, which you might want to do if your only purpose was to get one of the action's 2 triggers. A crow in the duel provides the Close Race trigger, which affects only enemy models with the stunned condition, which are within 6 inches of Yannic. Those models suffer 1 damage. You'll remember that armor and some game effects reduce damage, but usually cannot reduce it all the way to 0 unless the game effect specifically says so. Since this trigger does not say when resolving, it happens after the initial healing and damaging takes place. a model in range that has armor and the stun condition would wind up suffering 2 damage, since the first point cannot be reduced to 0, and the second point comes later and also cannot be reduced to 0. The second trigger comes from a tome and is called Surge. This doesn't affect the models in range, but lets Yannic draw a card into her control hand. Yannic's bonus action, Consolidate Power, has a target number of 10 and a stat 6, so she needs just a 4 to make it work. She targets a friendly minion within 10 inches and pushes that minion up to 4 inches toward another friendly model in that minion's line of sight. This could be toward Yannic or any other member of its crew the targeted model can see. A tome in this duel will give the Draw Out Secrets trigger, letting you drop a scheme marker into base contact with the targeted minion once you get him where he's going with the push. A ram gives the Mend trigger, which heals the targeted minion too. Between democratic elections and the Mend trigger on Consolidate Power, Yannic might be able to keep her crew going even after they repeatedly use their Price of Progress ability, so keep their proximity to Yannic in mind as you play. The Catalan Brawler is the steel-fisted enforcer of the Outcast Starter Box. Like Yannic, he has the Price of Progress and Hard-to-Kill abilities. He also has Armor +1, so all damage he suffers is reduced by 1, but cannot be reduced to 0 with this ability. Condor Security is an interesting ability that says other friendly models within 2 inches of the Brawler and a friendly scheme marker may not be targeted by enemy attack actions if the Catalan Brawler is a legal target for the action. Let's break that down in a little more detail. First off, the 2 models and the scheme marker do not all have to be within 2 inches of each other. You could have the Catalan Brawler here, Yannic Waller here within 2 inches of him, and a scheme marker they dropped earlier over here within 2 inches of Yannic. Say that Hildegard from the Neverborn starter box is here, 4 inches away from both the Brawler and Yannic when she uses her Sweet Song tactical action. Since this is a tactical action and not an attack action, both Outcast models must deal with the Grimm's Sweet Song, since Condor Security affects only attack actions. When Hildegard targets Yannic with the Take by the Hand bonus action, which is also one of Hildegard's attack actions, Condor Security takes effect. This does not automatically change the target to the Brawler, but prevents Hildegard from targeting Yannic, since the Catalan Brawler is a viable target. If Hildegard wants to use the bonus action, she'll have to target him. If Hildegard were here, just within 6 inches of Yannic, but outside of 6 inches to the Catalan Brawler, she could target Yannic just fine, since the Brawler is outside the range of her attack and not a legal target. The Brawler's last ability is what is known as a resistance trigger. This is called Cage Fighter and is tied to his defense stat. If another model attacks the Catalan Brawler with a melee attack action that the Brawler resists with his defense stat, he successfully resists the attack, and he has a crow in his duel, then he gets to declare the resistance trigger. Like most triggers, he doesn't have to use it since declaring triggers is optional, but it's a pretty cool one to use. If those other conditions are met, he basically gets to counter-strike for 2, 3, or 4 points of damage, but cannot cheat that flip. Let's look at some scenarios to make sure we understand this one right. The Catalan Brawler is here, surrounded by the Grimm crew. Klaus Norwood attacks the Brawler with Sharp Wit. Though this is a melee attack, it is resisted by the Brawler's willpower and not his defense. He cannot use this trigger. Let's say this is a combination crew with the Half-Bloods, and Angel Eyes fires her clockwork rifle at the Brawler. It is resisted with defense, but is a projectile attack, so he still doesn't get to use his trigger. The Red Cap attacks with its huge sickle and wins the duel. Even though the Brawler had a crow, he lost the duel, and the Red Cap will flip for damage normally. Say the Red Cap attacks the same way again. When the Brawler wins this duel and successfully defends, he has a crow, and may declare the Cage Fighter trigger if he wants. He does, so he then flips the top card from his Fate deck and does damage according to the strength of that card. The important thing to remember is that, unless stated otherwise, triggers take effect after succeeding. Unless the trigger says when resolving or after resolving, you get to use it only if you win the duel. On the back of the Catalan Brawler's card, his Brass Knuckles melee attack gives him a 1-inch engagement range. This does 2, 3, or 5 points of damage, and also gives the target the staggered condition, which reduces their movement stat by 2 and keeps them from being moved by other friendly models. The hold down trigger from a crow gives another member of the Brawler's crew a chance to take a projectile attack at the model the Brawler just hit. The Brawler is still engaging the targeted model, but if another member of his crew is in line of sight of the target and has a projectile attack to take, it may do so while ignoring the negative modifier that usually comes from friendly fire. The Toss in the Mud attack action has a 2-inch range, but is neither a melee attack nor a projectile attack, so the Brawler can use it while engaged, even against another model other than the one engaging him. It has a target number of 12 and a stat 6, so he needs at least a 6 to make it work, and the target model resists with defense. If the Brawler targets a friendly model with this attack, the friendly model can relent without flipping a card, and as long as the Brawler has a 6 or better, the attack succeeds. Toss in the Mud pushes the targeted model 2 inches in any direction. It doesn't say up to 2 inches, so unless another model or terrain interrupts the push, it must go the full 2 inches. Once the push is complete, you get to end one condition on the model you just pushed. This can end focused or fast on an enemy model, or poison, burning, or distracted on a friendly model, or any other condition you don't want a model to have. Toss in the Mud has 2 triggers. A mask gives the reposition trigger, which lets the Catalan Brawler move up to 3 inches. This is not a push, so the Brawler can change directions during this movement as much as he wants. Also note this is not a walk action, so this triggered movement can take him out of engagement with an enemy model. A crow gives daze. After the targeted model pushes 2 inches and ends a condition of the Brawler's choosing, it gains stunned and pushes up to 3 inches again. Models with stunned cannot declare triggers, and their bonus actions count against their action limit until the end of their next activation. Remember that enemy models with stunned in range of Yannic's Democratic Elections tactical action suffer additional damage if she gets the close race trigger. The Brawler's only tactical action is his bonus action, Juggernaut. For the cost of a discard, the Brawler heals 1, 2, or 4 points of damage on himself, which can help him recover from using his Price of Progress ability. This healing effect is not tied to the card you discard. You discard any card from your control hand, or if the Catalan Brawler is within 6 inches of Yannic, he may use her Ingenuity ability to remove a nearby friendly ski marker if desired, and then you flip the top card of your Fate deck to determine how much the Brawler heals. A weak card of value 1 through 5 will heal 1, a moderate card of value 6 through 10 will heal 2, and a severe card with a value of 11 through 13 will heal 4. The Black Joker will heal nothing, while the Red Joker will heal severe +1, which in this case is 5. Unless you flip the Black Joker, which cannot be cheated, you always have the option of cheating in a better card from your hand if you don't like the card you flipped. The Catalan Riflemen are the minions in the starter box. You'll see that they have a hiring limit of 2, so even if you buy another starter box with 2 more Catalan Riflemen, you aren't allowed to have more than 2 in a crew at a time. Like their Outcast Syndicate peers, they have Hard to Kill and Price of Progress. Their other 2 abilities both relate to attacking models. Expert Shot lets them ignore friendly fire when using any of their attack actions. Normally, if you're shooting at a model that is engaged or is engaging another model, you have a negative modifier to hit it. Expert Shot overcomes this penalty, but does not combine with other abilities or stack to form a positive modifier. Stand and Fire requires that the Rifleman be unengaged. As before, engagement means your model is engaging an enemy model is engaging your model, or both. We'll look at the Rifleman's attack actions in a minute, but we can see already that he has 2 projectile attack actions and no melee attack, so the Catalan Rifleman has no engagement range. Enemy models can walk right into base contact with the Rifleman and walk away without a problem because he can't engage anyone. With that in mind, Stand and Fire requires that no enemy model be engaging the Rifleman. If that is the case, An enemy model that resolves the charge action within 8 inches of the Rifleman suffers 1 damage. The complete charge action is a push up to the model's movement stat, which generates an optional melee attack. It is only once the player finishes the push and then the melee attack, if any, that the charge is considered complete. If the enemy model is still within 8 inches of a Catalan Rifleman after both parts of the charge are done, then the ability may take effect. There are a couple of important considerations to keep in mind with this ability. For the enemy models that take the 1 damage, armor cannot reduce that to 0, but lowering the shielded condition can. At the same time, a model cannot be affected by multiple aura effects of the same name at the same time. So if you have these 2 Catalan Riflemen here, and this red cap charges in at Yannic here, where both of their 8-inch auras overlap, once the red cap finishes swinging its huge sickle, it will take 1 damage from stand and fire. Though it is in the aura of both Riflemen, the effects do not stack and it takes just 1 damage. On the back, the Rifleman has 2 projectile attack actions, both of which have a 14-inch range. Clockwork Rifle ignores cover, which normally comes from being near a building or other terrain, and adds 1 to the defending model's defense stat against the projectile attack, and puts a negative modifier on the damage flip if the attack is successful. Clockwork Rifle bypasses all of that, so the attack proceeds normally and the defending model gains no bonus to defense. If successful, it does 2, 3, or 5 points of damage. A crow in the duel provides the Stunning Strike trigger, which gives the target the stunned condition. In addition to keeping them from declaring triggers or using their bonus actions for free, enemy models with stunned in range of Yannic's Democratic Elections tactical action suffer additional damage if she gets the Close Race trigger. The other projectile attack, Warning Shot, does no damage but gives the target distracted +1. A mask in the duel provides the Coordinated Attack trigger, which lets another member of the Rifleman's crew take a melee attack against the model the Rifleman just shot at. Since the Catalan Rifleman always ignores friendly fire, it is easy for them to shoot at targets Yannic Waller or the Catalan Brawler are engaging. The Tome trigger is I meant to do that. This is a rare trigger that takes effect only if the attack failed, but still had a Tome in the duel. When you get this trigger, the next projectile attack the Rifleman takes during this same activation gets a +2 to its duel total. The fun part is knowing you can even fail on purpose. Check this out. Back to the red cap engaging Yannic between these 2 Riflemen. This one activates and fires Warning Shot at the evil puppet. The puppet flipped a 3 for a total of 8, while the Rifleman flipped a 10 for a total of 14. The Neverborn player chooses not to cheat, but the Outcast player cheats in a 3 of Tomes for a total of 7 and declares the I meant to do that trigger. The attack fails. When he fires his Clockwork Rifle at the red cap, he adds 2 to the 10 of rams he flips for a total of 17. The red cap flips a 5 for a total of 10 and does not cheat. Since the difference between their duel totals is 7 and not 5, the Rifleman has a straight flip for damage instead of a negative modifier. He flips a 6 for moderate damage and cheats in an 11 for severe, giving the puppet 4 damage after it reduces by 1 for its armor. The Catalan Rifleman's bonus action is its only tactical action and is called For the Core. You discard a card, or maybe remove a nearby friendly scheme marker if you're near enough to Yannic to benefit from her Ingenuity ability, and then the Rifleman may take the Interact action. This can drop or remove scheme markers or initiate a specific effect related to a scheme or strategy in the encounter you're playing. The regular rules of Interact apply, so you cannot take Interact if you're currently engaged by another model. If you're using this to drop a scheme marker, just remember you cannot put friendly scheme markers within 4 inches of each other when using the Interact action. Now that you understand how your models work together, practice playing a simplified game. This format also works very well in your friendly local game store for demo games. Set the table with a normal amount of terrain, as described in the core rulebook and also in video 301. Each player claims 1 standard deployment zone, which is an even strip across one side of the playing area 8 inches from the table edge. It doesn't matter who goes first or sets their models on the table first, as long as no part of any model's base extends beyond the deployment zone. Watch all the videos in the 100 and 200 series so you have a grasp of the fundamentals before you play. Be sure to have corpse and scrap markers, as your models will likely drop one or the other of these when they are killed. Some models also use them for special effects. Lastly, you'll need pass tokens to either skip activating a model as the balance of the game shifts, or to pay for other special game effects depending on your crew. With that said, you'll play a full game of 5 turns, but with only 4 models in each crew, it won't take that long. You can play at just 25 soulstones, which will be all the models in your starter box, or you can play at 30 soulstones, which gives you a few extra for an upgrade or two and some soulstones left over for your soulstone pool. You might want to wait until your second or third game before adding in upgrades and soulstones, and for your first game, just focus on the abilities, actions, and basic game mechanics. You also may have learned that in games of a certain size, the crew leader gets to take 3 actions and a bonus action. That size is 50 soulstones, so at this 25 or 30 soulstone level, all models, even the crew leader, will take just 2 actions and a bonus action. Like regular games, there is no scoring victory points in turn 1. In turns 2 through 5, each player can score victory points in 2 ways: kill an enemy model, or place a scheme marker into base contact with a piece of terrain that is on the enemy half of the table. You'll have to remove the scheme marker to score the point, but in this simplified game, you can score as many victory points as you're eligible each turn. If you kill one enemy model anywhere on the table, and then remove 2 scheme markers that you had placed next to terrain on the enemy side of the table, then you'd score 3 victory points that turn. At the end of the 5th turn, count up all your victory points and see who won. Be sure to show good sportsmanship and shake hands with your opponent after your game. After a few beginning games like this, look into the Henchman Hardcore format in Gaining Grounds and take your game to the next level. That's the overview of the Outcast Starter Box. Pick up a printable set of all the markers and tokens you need to play Malifaux in the Wargames Vault. If you haven't already, join our Patreon for early, ad-free access to all new content. And be sure to visit the Malifaux University gift shop for the latest in Malifaux-themed shirts, hoodies, drinkware, and more. Links are in the notes below. And remember, play friendly games, keep it simple, and have fun.